I'm Sean Bowes, concert visual designer in Los Angeles, California, and today we're talking to VJ Nurite.
Mercy. Son.
Nurite is an animator, show designer, and touring VJ based in Los Angeles. You can find her this summer on the festival circuit with Virtual Riot and Barely Alive, and she's worked with a number of other artists like Paul Oakenfold, Riot 10, Subtronics, to name a few. And all this on top of med school, which is incredible, as if that wasn't enough. Carmen, thanks for being on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. You have a really incredible resume in what seems like only a few years on top of doing med school. I'm super impressed. I want to dig into how you've done all that. First, I'd like to go back to the beginning, start with the basics, lay the foundation. Where'd you grow up? What were you into as a kid? What type of kid were you?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Minnesota, in like Robbinsdale area, like New Hope, Robbinsdale area. So like near Minneapolis. As a kid, I was extremely artistic. I think my parents, when I expressed an interest in science, they were like, "Are you sure you can go to med school? I think you're more the artsy kind." So there was a lot of doubt in me that I would be able to do something scientific. And but then, kind of switched and had done like very medical / scholarly related things. And then I think for me, like, I graduated from college, got into medical school. And in that year before med school, I was like, a mentor had told me, do something that's completely unrelated to medicine. So that's when I started getting involved in visuals and kind of learning about what they are. And I went to a show I can't remember what the show even was. This was so long ago, but I went to a show and I met a VJ there. And I was kind of just running around the show trying to learn what everybody did. So I wanted to know what the tour manager did, what the lighting designer did, and had landed on this VJ who was very enthusiastic in showing me Resolume and wanted to show me how visuals work. And at the time, like, I didn't even know how to set up a secondary display on my computer, which I think is pretty crazy to like think about.
Wow.
And this was like 3 or 4 years. So like I was never growing up as a computer nerd. Like I didn't know. I think the biggest struggle for me was learning just how to like use Resolume, open the program, like understand what layers are. But yeah, I started to learn how to VJ. I practiced at home to like mixes with like, pack visuals that you buy online, and had my first go. I think my very first artist was like Miha and Bleep Bloop, and they were like really small at the time. So they, were pretty like, they were opening for, I think, Bass Nectar. And I got to VJ for them at this festival. And that was really my first time VJing. And then, as I became more interested and involved in VJing, I started to go, I really want to make the content I see on the screen. And so that's why I fell into animation, because I wanted to make the animations I could see. And then the same happened later on where I was like, I want to be able to create the artwork that I'm animating. So then I got into illustration. So I think that's kind of probably longer than you wanted, but that's kind of my journey of how I got into doing visuals in the first place.
Awesome. Yeah, great summary. I think we'll dig into a few of these piece by piece. But that yeah, that's incredible. So you went to school for medicine, science, nothing related to art at all, and a mentor told you get a hobby because this is going to be pretty intense. So you need a mental break. What you said you went to a show and we're trying to figure out what people were doing. Was that like an intentional quest for a hobby at the time? Like what prompted you to get interested in that and like really look into all these different roles that people were playing at the show?
Yeah, so I had like become friends with a couple of different music artists, like DJs. One of the first friends I actually made in the scene was Virtual Riot, which is like really crazy to think about because like we've been friends for so long, and then like eventually we ended up doing visuals together. But many years later, after like talking about one day we'll do this together, but he was opening on a tour, so he was one of the first people I met, and like he was one of the people I came to hang out with, and he was like everybody there was so enthusiastic about what they did. They were so fast paced, and they were putting together this amazing show that was like planned out from start to finish, from the lighting calls to the visual calls to where the photographer and videographer needed to be. And I think like getting to see a show like that where it was like I was very fortunate because like a lot of VJs start out VJing in the club, doing like you know doing like long nights for like not very much money and like and I'm not saying I didn't do that at some point. I definitely had my fair share of the grunt work, but I my first exposure wasn't that. It was like a full put together production tour that's on a bus and goes from city to city. So I got to see that, and that was just like, I think that captivated me. And I just thought it was amazing. I never knew that much went into a show. And I think that's what made me kind of fall in love with it. Because I knew that I liked listening to the music and going to these shows, but I didn't know why. And, that was kind of part of why. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That explains a little bit about your sort of meteoric rise in this field, is that you're immediately exposed to like what this should be rather than like a broken projector in the back of a club on some sheet. It's like a fire hazard, and like you're playing off a 10-year-old laptop and nobody's getting paid. Like it's working your way from there to EDC it's a long journey. It's good to see how that should work.
Yeah.
Do you think your like your scientific mind or like medical interest played any kind of part in that? Like, do you have this like behind the scenes fascination with like how things are made and how things work in general life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest way it plays a role is like a love for learning and learning quickly. I'm like used to getting a fire hose of information, processing it, and making something of it. So, when I was first learning how to VJ, like, that was to go from not knowing how to set up a secondary display to like setting up Resolume on your own and mapping a stage. Like, that was a lot of work, for me, like to go from that to that. So I think like I had a lot in some ways, like, yeah, I got to kind of start and see like the really awesome production, but I had such little skill. Like usually some people come in and they're like big computer nerds. They've already played around making content for many years, and like I didn't have any of that. I like, and YouTube videos weren't as like popular. So like I just, and there weren't YouTube videos on how to VJ either. So like I think like for me when I first started, I was like really had a lot of catch up to do. And I think had I not had that medical background where I could learn really quickly, and process a lot of information fast, I think I would have not been able to kind of be where I am if that makes sense, because I would have definitely had to learn by a lot more trial and error. And I still had to learn by a lot of trial and error, and I still played the grimy club shows where the projectors didn't work, and like, you know, you're like, you somehow talked someone into giving you like $100 or something. Like, yeah, I've definitely played that role. So
Hell yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It really is.
Yeah. Another piece I want to kind of really go back and dissect some of this. You mentioned, you know, being friends with some people in the scene, and that's sort of how you found your way into this and getting interested in it, and like getting access to that like behind the scenes look at things. Um, how did you meet these people and become friends with them? Were you just like hanging out at shows? Did you just enjoy the music? Were you,
Yeah.
I don't know. Tell us that story.
Sure. Hanging out at shows. I used to go to shows with friends. And there was a couple times where, you know, you meet somebody through a show and like they would just really like and connect with you. And then they like, a couple of the people were like people who worked at Skyway, and they were like, we think you'd be really good doing like the artist relation or being a runner. So I ended up helping out with like at Skyway Theater in Minneapolis. I ended up helping out going to drive and pick up artists at the airport. So I met a few of them there, and often, you know, you bring them to go get food, or you would show them around, or you just help them. Like sometimes they land and they're like, this happened and my whole suitcase isn't here and I need to go buy an outfit at the store, and you like drive them around and help them like figure out their life for a few minutes. And so I think like it started with just stuff like that. And that was kind of what I chose to do in my summer off before med school, was like, I'm gonna drive, meet some artists, meet some cool people. And then those like moments develop friendships, and that's kind of how, you know, every time they come to the city, they're excited to see you because they want to hang out. And they're like, oh, I had so much fun when we went tubing down the Apple Valley River or something like that. So I think like, yeah, it's quite stories like that, I guess, is more so how I like became friends with a lot of them.
Nice. That's awesome. That's another one of those like jobs that I don't think a lot of people realize. Like somebody has to do that, you know, at like festivals and even just shows where somebody's flying in. Like there's somebody that goes and picks them up and makes sure they're all good, and you know, gets them in there, gets them to their hotel, or make sure they, you know, if they need to buy a shirt, you take them to fucking Walmart and get them some shirt. Like, and that's a cool way to really get some very unique FaceTime with people in the scene. That's really awesome.
Yeah. And I think if you like connect well with people, like I'm quite like, it's weird to like talk about something that you're good at, but I feel like one thing that is like strong suit for me is like connecting with people. And I don't know if that just comes from my experience in medicine or if, like why, but that to me, I feel like has always been a strong suit for me. And I think that's been a big reason why I've been able to like work with so many people, because they get to know me and trust me. And I might not be the best animator or the best VJ, but like I try really hard. I work my butt off, and you know, I have nothing but nice things to say about other people in the industry. And I think those things really can get you far.
Yeah. What do you think are one or two things that you do that might be different than other people, or are just good things to keep in mind when you're, you know, meeting new people and building relationships with people?
Yeah, I think like one of the things that I am always quite good at is like not making someone uncomfortable in terms of like, let's say I'm a big fan of their music. They might not realize in that chat or that connection that I was a big fan of their music. So like, you know, I could have picked them up from the airport. I could be their biggest fan and they're not going to know that I'm their biggest fan, if that makes sense. And I think like there's something to be said about just wanting to be treated normally. And I think like that was something that I always made sure that I did, was like not treat them like they're, you know, special in any way, or like or get overly excited about it. And just, I also can find that stuff overwhelming, like where I'm at now, is like sometimes the fans can overwhelm me with that same amount of energy, and I know that it comes from a really loving place, but sometimes it can just be a little overwhelming, if that makes sense. So I think that's probably the biggest like tip that I have if you're like an upcoming VJ, is like be excited and be eager to learn, but like maybe not too excited.
Yeah, it's that could be difficult sometimes, but you need to.
Yeah.
I need to remember that a lot.
Yeah,
I
it's
go
hard.
fangirl mode like way too easily, and I need to like just chill. These are normal human beings, and if you
Yeah.
meet somebody at the same level of like just a normal person, that's yeah,
It's
probably better.
hard. It's hard. Like I've met a few, like there's a couple like pop stars I've done work for, and like, you know, I come back from a dinner and I'm just like, yeah, I went, you know, went to dinner with them, and like my partner is just like, what do you mean you just went to dinner with that person? Like, are you freaking out? And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, we're chilling. Like, so I think like, yeah, I don't know. I can't really explain it, but I think that's quite a helpful tip. And then like the other helpful tip is like be eager to learn, but also quick to admit when you don't know what you're doing. And I think being vulnerable about your limitations is like another thing that people really identify with. And I mean that not just from a VJ to VJ perspective, but from a VJ to artist perspective as well. Like, I'll be very honest with an artist that I can't do something that they want if I can't do it. And I think that's like a really important thing. So I think both of those things, that's what I have to offer for that question.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice. Um, so let's see. Let's talk about your first sort of opportunity to perform live. What led to that, and what was that experience like for you?
So first opportunity, as in my very first time VJing, or my first time like properly putting a show together?
Let's go with the very, very, very first time first, and then we could talk about like, yeah, first time putting a show together. But like, just
Okay.
like you got the opportunity to push some buttons in Resolume on stage. How did you get that opportunity, and
Yeah.
what happened?
So the VJ that I met that initially got me excited into learning how to do Resolume invited me to drive to Wisconsin, middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, to get some screen time for the first time. And what he did was basically like, do you know, they're just like mixers, you know, where you can like fade from one person VJing to the other person.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we had this little mixer. He would be VJing, and then he would wait to see on my, like, we had another secondary display. We'd look at that. He would just look at that, and when he thought I was doing something cool, then he would switch it to mine,
Oh,
and bring it
nice.
up. So he was like, you know, that was my first like time VJing, and I was really grateful that he like kind of led me along the way in that way. And then that kind of led into like my first time getting to learn how to put a show together, because um, I went to programming for a show that he was putting together. And we did a really similar thing when in the first couple of shows, where I would make content, or I had certain songs that I would do visuals for, and he would flip it to me during the set during that time, and then flip it back to him and do some of the other songs, and then flip it back to me. So that was kind of how I started to learn how to VJ, and about timing of the show, and about yeah, like lighting calls and things like that.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really cool way to get into it. Like very sort of structured, building up into, you know, having a full show, but sort of getting to VJ alongside somebody and get mixed in, to then having like you're splitting a set with somebody,
Mhm.
and kind of building up from there, and having, you know, uh, that safety net, but also that mentor to observe next to you. Uh, yeah, that's a really, really fucking cool opportunity and a cool way to do it. I feel like the VJ industry needs more apprenticeships, because
Yeah,
I kind of
I'm
just
very
made this
open.
shit up, and I think I still do it very wrong. So
Yeah, I'm very open to that. Like I'm trying to like bring other, I've got a couple VJs that are really like at that similar phase to where I was, where they're like, I want to be a VJ, but I don't really know what I'm doing. And I'm hoping to do the same thing for them, because I thought that was like, yeah, that was really nice. Nice thing to do for someone, and just a great way to learn. And definitely a lot high riskier mistakes. And you can definitely get yelled at a lot easier than you could for doing, you know, like a club show. But I kind of started with that, and then I obviously had to do my own legwork to like learn how to be a proper VJ. So I also did the club shows and working for like very little money, and that was kind of where I got my screen time so that I could work up to where I'm at. So it wasn't quite like, you know, I was on that tour and then the next day I'm like the VJ on that tour or anything like that. But it was a really awesome opportunity to see like this is where I could grow to. And it really made me more determined to go home and practice, to go home and try to get whatever gigs that I could, work on making content, things like that.
yeah, yeah, I just think that, yeah, that's really awesome. Getting like the way that you found uh, opportunities to get exposure to like really high level environments, uh, and productions, like super early, and learn as much as possible from being in that situation is really fucking cool. And something I think a lot of people could learn from. Uh, yeah. So what did happen after that tour? You started doing some club shows. Like what? How did that kind of develop? And what were you doing in the other side of your life at this point as well? Like how did you kind of balance all this as you were starting out?
Yeah, so at this time I would have been right before med school started. Um, and I was doing shows pretty much wherever I could get them. Some of the opening artists on that initial tour were hiring me to VJ for them. Um, but it was kind of one of those things of like, we'll hire you to VJ, but you got to find a way to get here and a place to stay, kind of thing, you know? So, you know, I started with that and learned, learned slowly to like, I grew with a lot of those artists, and one of those artists would be Rye 10, one of them would be Virtual Riot, one of them would be, I'm trying to think who else was on that tour that was quite a smaller artist that has grown up to be a lot bigger of an artist. And I watched that, you know. I think Riot 10 had like 14,000 followers or something like that when I started like working with him on stuff. And, you know, it's just crazy to like really stick with someone and learn. And now that, you know, they don't call me up saying, if you can find a way to get here, you know, they pay me properly and fly me everywhere. And, but, it's cool to grow with that artist. And so I think for me, like, I started working like that. I started learning how to animate and started working on some smaller packages, for artists, and some smaller artists. And eventually, like, people see what you're doing and they like it, and you know, you slowly get hired by, you know, little bigger budget, and you eventually grow. And it's a slow process. I mean, to even just go to like what I get paid as a VJ now to what I used to get paid, it's like crazy for me to even think, that I would have accepted a gig for so little when I first started out. Like, what am I doing? Devaluing my own work. But yeah, we got to start somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And so what are some of those things that you're doing to like put that work out there and be discovered by the next artist, or what are some of those things that you're doing that get you called back by an artist you've worked with before?
Sure. So some of the biggest things with I'll start with the artists before. So like if I've worked with an artist, I think some of the biggest things I could recommend would be hitting your deadline, um, being straightforward about what you can and can't do, um, making exactly what they ask for. Like if they give you a list and it's really specific and detailed, like you better be making the content that's on that list of things they gave you. And really going above and beyond. So like one thing that I commonly do is like I'll agree to, a visual package, and I'm saying, let's say I'm going to make 5 loops, just as an example. Maybe I make 7. And if that artist doesn't like one of them, it's no chip off the shoulder because we already have, you know, 7, and I said I was going to make 5. So then it's no harm done. If they don't like one of them, we just remove it. It's no big deal. And they're still getting, and if they do like all of them, we have extra content. So I think like that, those are a couple things that I've done that I think keep clients coming back to me, and just working really hard, like I think my animation's one thing, but with my VJ shows, like I put in so much work into every show. I plan out every aspect of the show. And if you actually broke down how much I make for the number of hours I put into a show, it probably wouldn't be that much actually in the end of the day. So I think I think putting in a lot of effort doesn't go unnoticed. So yeah, I think those are things that reason people will come back. And I think the reason I'm able to kind of get new clients is more just word of mouth than anything. But I also currently do a lot of, I'll make teaser videos for each one of the projects. I haven't made them for all of them, but I'm trying to be better about that now. So all the new projects that I do, I try to get teasers made, which mix the visuals and the visuals being used in a live setting. So like video from the show. And then, yeah, so it's basically mixing that to an edit of one of their songs, and kind of having that as like as a little like launch announcement so that we can announce the visuals. And artists often really like that because they're excited and stoked to put out that they have new visuals and they have this new visual experience or visual show. So I think that's the another tip in terms of like social media that I think has been really helpful for me. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. That's another way to go above and beyond and kind of show that you're invested in their show as much, as much as they are. And like I also noticed that, on your site you have all the tour dates for artists that you're going out with, and like ticket links to it, which I don't know how your arrangement is worked out, but who knows if you get a cut of ticket sales. But even if you, especially if you don't, you just want people to show up to the show so that if they have a good show, next year's budget is better. Yeah,
I don't get any ticket portions, but I just really believe in all the artists that I work with, and I really believe in the show, and I think it is fun for me for people to like go and see a really good show, and I'm proud of it. So yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So I read you have an interview in EDM World that's really good. I'll put a link down to it. It's also on your website, which I'll put a link to as well. But everybody should check that out. In that, you talk about a few things that I like to dig into a little bit deeper. You talked about just recently how you put a lot of effort into prep for the show, and in that article you detail some of the steps that you go through getting ready for a show. It's quite meticulous. Most of my experiences in like small clubs or as like the house VJ for a stage, so I don't really have a lot of prep time or anything. I think when you're building these relationships with an artist, you can really get into it. Uh, can you describe a little bit of like the typical work that goes into one of your shows and how that approach is different if it's a club or a festival gig or for a whole tour? Just give us a little like behind the scenes about what goes into making visuals for an artist and designing a show.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, like with every artist that I'm going to VJ for, I have them send me a set list in advance. So I'll know each one of the tracks that are going to come up, and I will sit there and probably listen to them hundreds of times each song, and we'll pick visuals that I want to have for the build of the song, the drop, maybe an overlay I'm going to during that set. So each one of them is going to get kind of a similar amount of content. And then each song will have a lighting call and a laser call and an SFX call associated to it. So obviously, all of them won't have SFX, but certain songs throughout the whole set, we might be using cryo, we might be using pyro. It could be some other, like sometimes they have random special SFX. I'll decide out what color the lights I want to be, whether that's complementary to what I'm doing or matches the colors. Lasers have to be planned out super meticulously because if you have big visuals up on the stage, you can't see the lasers properly. So when you're having the lasers go, you're going to be cutting your visuals back. And often the lighting and laser will play together. And kind of you have to give them that space as well. And I think it's fun too. And if you don't give them the space, they'll take the space from you. And so I think it's important to plan out all of those things. And then as well as like, and this is kind of circling back to what we talked about with how to promote yourself as well. I also put in notes for a photographer or videographer where we want to get pictures from on stage versus where we want to get pictures from back in front of house. I want them to get really great pictures of my visuals, and I want them to get the best stuff. So if I have them in front of house during those times, then we have really awesome promotional material and photos and videos to use on the website as well. And so I think it's a win-win for everybody in that situation. So that's some of the prep work that goes into it. Really coming up with a vibe and a feeling that's invoked by each one of the songs is also like a huge piece to it. So really my show file that I'm preparing goes through each one of those songs. And then I have additional content that I put in there in case the artist decides to do back-to-backs or encores or random things of that such that come up. And I have to just wing it and go on the fly. And so, yeah, that's kind of some of the prep work that goes into doing a show. And it takes me a long time, like a really, really long time, like many all-nighters of listening to heavy dubstep that I've heard 9 million times and putting together the show.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty involved. That's really awesome. I think that's maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm a shitty VJ, but that sounds like above and beyond of anything I've heard people doing, which is really, really nice. Like you're thinking about every aspect of the show. And like the photographer thing, when I read that, I was like, you're thinking of everything. Like that's great.
They appreciate it too. Yeah, they're very excited for that as well. So
yeah, I think that's another one of those things. Like if you can make everybody around you's life easy and make their work look great, also they're gonna like you a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a team effort. I can't do it alone. So it's it if I can give everyone the tools to like for us to work together the best way we possibly can, then that's what I want to do. So there's a lot of ways to VJ though. I don't want you to think that your way is the wrong way or my way is the right way. Like I plan out everything like that, but I'm less of a freestyle VJ. Like if you handed me a pack of random content and asked me to go crush and here's a bunch of effects and good luck, you'd probably outdo me because I'm very like plan my set out, plan the effects I want to use, plan everything out, and my freestyle game is weaker because I don't do it as often. So
That's probably debatable, but I'll appreciate that. And that's what I find really interesting, and why I kind of wanted to start this series is because everybody, there's not a lot of information out about how to do this stuff. As you mentioned before, like even if you do look up YouTube videos of how to use Resolume or how to VJ, there's really not a lot aside from like the technical basics, and it's a very flexible thing where you could set up your show file however the hell you want and use whatever combination of MIDI controllers that you want. So like everybody's kind of building their own instrument and teaching themselves how to play it all at the same time.
yeah,
And it's cool to see what different people come up with. And yeah, I'm also trying to fill that gap and like put some information out there to help people get started a little bit easier. So yeah, really cool to hear different approaches, because there are different styles of VJing, whether you're like really planning a show out for a specific artist, specific show, or like I'm going to Forbidden Kingdom in a few weeks I think just to be like one of the house VJs at one of the stages. So you're getting some of the openers, and you just kind of got to wing it. You might not know any of their music. I try to listen to them beforehand, but you're getting visuals a couple days before. Maybe if you're lucky, you might be getting them while they're on stage. That's happened to me before. So
yeah, absolutely. It's very different when you house VJ. And I've done my fair share of house gigs, and that's a tricky one because you're literally just toss stuff right beforehand. Half the time the visual packs are like corrupted or like or don't work well, or you're like recoding them 10 minutes before the set because they gave them to you 15 minutes before the set. So 100% understand that and feel that so hard. So yeah. Which stage are you at? So I'll be at Forbidden Kingdom.
Oh, no, I actually don't know which stage yet.
Okay.
I just got the gig like a few days ago. But I'm going out with like Drew Best and the Imminent dudes, Romario, and all of them.
They're super solid.
So I don't know what stages we'll be at, but yeah, maybe we'll run into each other. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I'll be at stage 1 with Virtual Riot and Barely Alive, I think.
Nice.
So yeah.
Hell yeah.
But a couple other stages with some visuals too, like Schlumpf and Subdocta. Both of those guys I did visuals for, so they'll be out there as well.
Killer. Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. It's been a little while, so I'm excited. That was like the sign that the world is back. It's like I got a VJ gig after like more than a year of silence. I'm like, hell yeah, we're back, baby. Real life shows.
Awesome. That's a great feeling, isn't it? Forbidden Kingdom's my first one back too, so we both can look at each other rusty.
Yeah, it might be a little bit of a shit show. Everybody,
I think it will
practice be and like way too pent up. Like it's gonna be
definitely. I've got a bunch of time code videos, but we're not going to run time code because we don't have time to program. So I'm just hoping my timing is on because we got like 6 or 7 of them that I'm going to time by hand, and we're just going to go ahead and try it.
Hell yeah, we'll do it live. Let's go. Awesome. Sick. Yeah. So I'm going to reel us back in a little bit. You also, in that interview, credit a couple of VJs with teaching you some things. And I'd like to dive into that a little bit, maybe get some examples. You credit Brady I've never said his last name before.
Phillipson.
Phillipson, who is Excision's VJ, with teaching you how to navigate the career as a VJ, how to treat people you work with respectfully, and what not to do. You talked a little bit about how to treat people you work with respectfully, but can you give us a couple of examples of other lessons in there that might fall under one of those categories?
Yeah, totally. So I think like one of the biggest things that Brady like taught me was like treat your house team really well. So like when I first started out, like a lot of times I'd be showing up asking for things, like maybe I even start asking for things before I even take time to like introduce who I am. And like you have to remember like you're in their space, like you are a guest, you are not the star of the show, you are a guest. And so I think like coming in, being really respectful, I usually try to like, if it sometimes it's tricky with a festival, but I usually try to like bring a pack of beer or something like that for the house team as like a thank you for making my life easier, because they're the reason that everything runs smoothly. So I think that was a big lesson for me that he kind of guided me with when I first started out. And like one day I came scrambling at, this was what's the boat festival called?
Holy Ship.
Holy Ship. And I ran, I was scrambling, didn't know what I was doing, came up to and I said, can I get the pixel map for the stage, please? And he just looks at me like, because he's standing next to this house VJ, and he just looks at me and goes, this is a projector stage. This is not a LED wall. There's no pixel map. Like know what you're coming to ask for before you ask for it. And I felt like that was a really good lesson for me to be like, okay, yeah, I just need to be like more on my shit. So that's a lesson I think Brady definitely helped me learn. And I really appreciate him. And I've worked with him a number of times, like Lost Lands, the Gorge for what it wasn't Base Canyon, and a couple of other like anything Excision. We did a couple of the support dates for Excision. So I just really appreciate everything that he's taught me and whatnot.
Nice. Yeah. Great lesson. Can I flip that around as a house VJ? What could I do to make your life easier when a guest VJ is coming in?
Yeah, that's a hard one for me. Like I'm honestly like very blown away by how easy my life has been with that stuff. I appreciate like the biggest thing that is a stressor for me is like if I advance for a Cat 5 line and comm and it's not there, especially the Cat 5 line, like because then I show up to programming and I'm waiting for like half of programming to just get the Cat 5 up and running. And like if we have to test for live time code or whatnot, sometimes like if half my programming goes away to waiting for Cat 5 to appear, I don't get to even really fully program for the time code. So I think that's the only thing that ever I'm like, whenever I'm in front of a house, if it doesn't happen. But other than that, like honestly, I don't have any complaints because like most of the house VJs go above and beyond. Most of them show up and I have a Cat 5 there and the comm is there and all of it's working. But I hate when I have to go in and be like, where's the Cat 5 line? And they're like, what Cat 5 line? And I'm like, the one we advanced for, and then they're like off going to buy one at the store locally or something like that. Like, and I'm just like having a cow. But so those are the only times I think that like, yeah, things are like that.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good tip. You also, in that same article, credit Cam McNeil with being a Resolume bad boy. And I like that. I had to include that. And teaching you a few tips and tricks. Do you have any Resolume tips or tricks or secret weapons that you can share without like needing a tutorial or like a screen share or anything?
Yeah, I have to think about that one. So Cam probably has the best timing of any VJ I've ever like seen my entire life. So yeah, he crazy wicked good VJ. I'm always poking him. I'm like, teach me more tricks. But honestly, like a lot of the tricks and things that he taught me were quite early on. So I feel like most VJs would probably know most of them, you know, like it might be something so stupid like how to map or something like that. But yeah, I'm just really grateful that he was always very patient with me. And you know, like if I didn't know how to do something, he would help me figure it out. One time we had a festival. I showed up with a Mac laptop trying to VJ this festival. We can already tell where this is going to go, right? So none of the content, it's not working. It's like a 4K screen. My Mac can't handle it. Cam grabs like my USB drive, like puts all the content into his computer, opens up his house VJ Resolume, like opens the project file so that I can VJ like on his computer impromptu, and somehow like, you know, a few minutes into the set we got it up and running and he like saved the day. So like, you know, most VJs would have just watched me like struggle and just been kind of like should show up with the right equipment, but like Cam didn't, and he just like helped me solve the problem. So I think for me, like, you know, those kind of friendships, those kind of like people treating you with kindness like that is just like above and beyond for me, and that was huge. So yeah, but the tips and tricks one's tricky. We should do another, like we should do a tutorial segment on tips and tricks. That would be fun.
Hell yeah, I would love to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, tips
I'd
and
have to
tricks.
think about it.
I also want to do with some people some like cribs style like VJ rig tours, hardware and like in the show file, how you have things set up and like what kind of optimizations that you make.
Yeah, I used to do like live streams where I would do that. That was actually like in the very beginning how I kind of started to build a following, was I would do live streams teaching people how to like use Resolume and how to like set up a show file and things like that. But it would be fun to do a YouTube thing for that. I think it would be cool.
Hell yeah.
You know, it's definitely needed because like those YouTube videos don't exist.
Yeah, where are those? Are those lost to time, or did they get recorded? We need to re-upload those.
DJs don't like to share tricks very often.
I understand that, but that's dumb.
Just saying. I'm not saying I'm like that. I'm just saying a lot of VJs don't like to share tricks. So
I'm trying to change that. Trying to change that vibe.
I'm trying to change it too. I'm trying to change it too.
That's a problem in a lot of like design and tech stuff. But my perspective on that is like if you're watching my video, like I'm a step ahead of you already. So like why am I worried about somebody catching me by learning from me? That's impossible. And sharing's caring.
Yeah, I also don't care if someone catches me. Like maybe then they'll return the favor and they'll teach me some tricks I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Preach. I love it. Amazing. I'm trying to think if I have any other quotes from that article. Now that was my favorite one. Resolume bad boy. That's good. So I'm curious about so let's go rewind the tape a little bit here to content. You also you're an animator, make a bunch of content. When did you start doing that? What led to that? And yeah, how are you making this stuff?
Yeah, I started about 6 or 7 months after I became a VJ. I started in Blender before Blender was user friendly. I still would argue it's not user friendly, but like, let me tell you, when I took on Blender, that program was rough. I mean, like, yeah. You could have taught a whole course and still not known how to use Blender. So, I learned in Blender, and then very quickly left Blender. I dumped Blender and went to Cinema 4D, and I'm so glad. I never regretted that decision. Um, and then I also use a bit of like, I use this plugin called Element 3D in After Effects as well. So I do some of the more basic logo animation stuff will be just After Effects because it's just a little faster, easier on my computer as well. Where Cinema 4D, the fans are really pumping when I'm using that. And the render times are can be atrocious. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think for me, Cinema 4D is kind of where I really got a footing, and currently I'm trying to learn Unreal. I'm doing it very slowly and I'm just one step at a time. Again, there's not many tutorials. Like there's a few of them, but there's not a ton of really great tutorials out there for making visuals in Unreal. So it's a bit harder to pick up, and it reminds me of the old days. Because when I learned Cinema 4D, I never looked at a tutorial. I just learned the hard way. And, so here we are back at that.
Yeah, it's Unreal is one of those tools that's like a lot of people are getting into, but in like this space and in like motion graphic space and stuff like that in filmmaking, but it's not made for that at all. So we're kind of just it's becoming made for that. They're they're seeing that and putting a lot of resources into it, but it's not quite there yet. So we're kind of bastardizing it a little bit, and the education isn't quite there. It is really cool though, because not rendering or rendering in almost real time is awesome.
Yeah,
That's why I like
really
Notch
cool.
as well. It's that's a fun one.
Interesting on the line of Notch. So where I actually made my very first piece of content, because I'm almost lying if I don't talk about this, wasn't Blender though. It was this program called Magic. It was $80. You import assets and it's node based and it's real time, and you can actually plug it as a plugin into Resolume, and bring it in as a layer. And I would animate in the middle of the show. I was like coming up with shapes and interesting animations for these things, and then we would mix them live into the show. So like when I was saying that one VJ was watching me, he would like wait till I made something cool, and then we'd bring it in as like a transparent layer into Resolume. And that was actually how I first like started making content. Like if I had to be fully honest, but content where you make a model and you like rig it and make it walk and things like that, that was Blender.
Nice. Hell yeah. Shout out to Magic Music Visuals. That's the
Yeah.
that's the shit. You just made like two people in my audience very happy. There's the one guy that always comments, "What about Blender?" And so you made him happy, and then not so happy a few seconds later, and then
Blender's great now. Blender's great now. I'll just say that.
It is cool. I always say no hate on Blender. I
can't hate on it now. Like it's so much more user friendly now. Like if you're using Blender, like props, because it's also a really good program now. But when it started out, it was rough.
Yeah, before the UI update, it was a challenge. But it's definitely intriguing to me now. And then way back when I first started VJing out in Boston, a friend of mine also named Sean, who is a VJ, who was showing me some stuff, and he is a Magic enthusiast. He would throw pretty much any clip he downloaded had to go through Magic a few times before he would use it, because he's not using anything stock. It's got to be customized via Magic, and he's also a Houdini guy. So anything with nodes, he's like all about.
Nodes are fun.
So shout out to those, and first time appearances on the show. So some original content for everybody. We're not all just cinema. We use other things occasionally too.
Yeah.
Element 3D too.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it. Hell yeah. Are there any other, while we're on the tools conversation, are there any other tools you've used over the years, or anything else you're like excited about?
Yeah, I can give you some other plugins for After Effects that I really like. Trapcode is really good. I have like the full suite. That one's awesome. And what else? I used oh my gosh, it starts with an S and I never remember it because I just use it in After Effects. I'm giving up because I can't remember the name of it.
What does it do?
It does cool stuff.
Is it the like the
It's good for
sapphire
like,
effects suite?
yeah, like quite, yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I'm trying to think what other tools. What are some other things? For Resolume, Chaser is a really good one. I don't use it a ton, but that one's a really good one to check out if you don't. That's a great plugin. Apparently now you can actually buy plugins for Resolume. Did you know that? I found this
It,
out yesterday from another VJ friend.
I remember seeing
There's a plugin
like
store here.
the juice bar or something like it's called juice something.
I don't
Uh,
know. Apparently there's a store and you can buy plugins for Resolume, which I had no idea was a thing. That's pretty cool.
yeah, that is cool. You used to have to like download them from corners of the internet and like
Yeah,
random
or
forum posts.
like sweet talk someone into giving you a beta version of like something, which happens way too often. So yeah, I think that's great. And then I'm trying to think what else. So like the other thing I've been doing recently, which is kind of interesting, is I now illustrate and I do my drawings in Procreate. So I've actually done some animation in Procreate because you draw frame by frame, and there's some things that drawing frame by frame is actually just easier straight up than like animating it. So yeah, there's a project I'm making an entire like music video for, and it's entirely done with Procreate animation. And I think that's kind of interesting. So I'm just literally doing all the animation, exporting them as GIFs, and bringing them into Premiere and putting them together. So
Wow,
kind of
that's
fun.
crazy. I do not have the patience for 2D animation, but
We're looking for like a stop motion feeling to it. So this is really the best way to like do that for it. So yeah.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize you could actually like animate in Procreate.
Yeah, you can.
It's pretty awesome. Uh, hell yeah. Um, let's see, and then I guess one of the last things I want to talk about, and then we'll do a couple little like rapid fire things and some parting words for the people of the internet. But just the thought of going through like all of the work that you've described as a VJ and the work and time that you put into your shows and the work and time that I put into shows that is a fraction of that, I think is a lot. Uh, I cannot imagine also going through med school, which is like notoriously the most time consuming and challenging thing you could probably do for school. How the fuck do you do that? Balance that? Like what supplements are you taking? Is there like are there secrets? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I don't sleep that much, that's for sure. But
An honest answer, all right.
but yeah, during the week, I like from 8 to 5 p.m. I try to focus on school and try to really make that a dedicated time to be present, and try to get all of my work done by that time. My reward for getting my work done is getting to be able to do my other work, which is the animating and the fun stuff that I really like doing. That occupies most of my evening, and quite into the wee hours of the morning. A big reason for that is I don't like it when people are hitting my phone up when I'm trying to animate. So I just wait until people are sleeping and don't hit up my phone. And that's usually when I animate. So I'm usually up very, very late at night drawing and illustrating and doing all of the creative work. Sleep like a few hours and then get up and do the med school thing. And then I think where it gets difficult is when I have shows, because like sometimes you have an exam on a Monday and you need to like study, but you also have a show Friday, a show Saturday, a show Sunday, and the first flight in get lands at like you leave at midnight and it lands at like 5 in the morning and your exams at like 8 a.m. So like that happens sometimes. And I study in the green rooms after the show, or I study between, like between the sets. And so I think like there's like this iPad program called Anki Deck, which is like basically it's basically like note cards but on your iPad. And I just flip through those note cards. I've done it like literally right up to the minute before a show starts and then immediately after you know, until I go to sleep. So I think like yeah, I'm always working very hard.
Wow. Yeah. That's super impressive. Where does that come from? Have you always had that like drive and energy?
Yeah, I've never slept like my whole life, really. Like, even when I was a kid, I would stay up late and read books until like 3 or 4 in the morning and then wake up for class at like 7 or 8 a.m. So, like, nothing out of the ordinary with the not sleeping a ton. And as far as like the wanting to constantly be busy, I've always just been that way. Like, I'm a better person when I'm really busy. So yeah, I think that's the best way I could put it.
Awesome. Yeah. And so I mean, I think it really is like you must really, really, really find this to be like a fun hobby, more so like in your mind rather than like another job that you have to do.
Totally.
Uh,
It's an
so
escape.
that helps it to be like regenerative
Yeah.
rather than double draining. Um, do you foresee yourself continuing to do this as you graduate and get into like full-time medicine and things like that? Are you going to be the Dr. VJ? Like,
Yeah, totally. 100%. I think for me, like this is my escape, like we just went through a global pandemic. You can imagine what like being a frontline worker in a pandemic is like. And having the escape, being able to draw, being able to animate, it's really the way I release stress and tension. And like, there's a lot of different ways that you can release stress and tension, and most medical students choose alcohol, which is like, not the greatest for your liver and stuff. So I chose DJing and I chose visuals, and they spend the weekends drinking and feeling like not great on Monday, and I spend the weekend doing shows and like don't feel any different on Monday. So, to each their own.
hell yeah. Yeah, it's a life hack right there. They're spending all their money uh, while you're getting paid to blink pixels at their face while they're shit hammered.
Exactly. Exactly.
uh, yeah, awesome. You, I almost like forgot. This is crazy. I usually, because this past year has been insane for people in this industry. Uh, I was having so much fun. I almost forgot that happened for a little while, for the first time in a while. But how did you navigate that with shows going away, this whole like side of your life almost vaporizing in overnight pretty much? What did you do those first few months? What did you do for the past year to stay involved in it, or like pivot that side of your business?
Yeah. So the first first few weeks of lockdown, I was in bed, very depressed, just because we were ready to launch a huge audiovisual show for Rampage. I basically didn't sleep for like 14 days straight trying to get ready for the show. And then the pandemic happened, everything got canceled. It was very difficult. It really sucked. For me, like, I guess the way that I survived, obviously live shows were like non-existent. I think I did like one drive-in show the entire time of lockdown. But I went to MCAD, which is the College for Art and Design here, and took a graduate course in concept art and learned how to illustrate and um, started making concept art for music videos and release animations, and transitioned to doing release lyric videos and release teasers for record labels. And that was the way that I survived in the pandemic. And I do mean survived because, like, you know, I was able to like have enough to like, you know, pay for like my food and just barely get enough to pay rent or mortgage, I mean. But you know, I no means think that I was killing it during the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very happy shows are back. I'm grateful for that. I hope that, you know, that doesn't change. And yeah, so I'm hoping we can continue on this path of recovery and healing from it. And I think everybody that's a VJ is feeling it. You know, where like a lot of people went and got day jobs. A lot of people just aren't going to return to being a VJ because they realize that they can't work something that could potentially go away one day like it just did. And so I think, like, you know, if you're able to get through it and you're still a VJ and you're still able to come back to the industry, then like you're doing better than most.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It was a shock to the system. And from like the beginning of 2020 to me anyway, felt like things were going the best they've ever gone, you know, like there were some
Yeah.
crazy tours about to happen. A lot of people were people were really putting money into visuals, and like a lot of tours coming up that summer that just like
Same.
March 14th gone.
Yeah. I like, yeah, I was making the most I had ever made. And it was like completely what you described, working with artists that I wanted to work with for a really long time, getting some like pop artist deals. And I was like, this is awesome. I'm gonna, you know, like, I can't wait to do all of this stuff. And then, but here we are. We're together. We're not in pieces. We're functioning. So
Yeah, making it through. And are you doing anything? You said you were learning some animation, you were getting into illustration and things like that. Um, are you doing anything else like that are, I know you have a couple of projects that recently came out over the past year and are coming out soon. Do you want to talk about any of that? Any of the projects that you're doing with illustration and kind of combining your medical interests and your art interests?
sure, yeah. One of the bigger things that I picked up during the lockdown was I educated myself about cryptocurrency, and I got involved with NFTs and started putting out NFTs focused around mental health, and specifically was donating 10% of all my profits to the Mind Deconstructed, which is like a nonprofit charity that um, raises awareness about mental health. They have a free podcast resource and they do research in mental health. So yeah, I started kind of doing that. Didn't really expect to like even make any money, and started selling artwork, started hosting rooms in Clubhouse surrounding mental health, and really was surprised at kind of what I was even able to do in the short amount of time that I've been involved in it. So I still have a a few more projects coming out related to that in the future, some of which I can't talk about yet. But keeping an eye out on what comes out. I'll be announcing a few things recently or like coming up. And then I think the other thing else that's kind of coming up is I'm going to be making merch. And that merch, part of that percent of that merch will also be going towards mental health. They will all be mental health related. And they're going to have NFC chips in the sleeve, which you can scan with your phone and you can share mental health resources with your friends. And so that's coming out. That's kind of in the works. And yeah, that's something I'm really excited about as well.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Sweet. So I don't want to take up too much time here. I'm gonna jump into the rapid fire round. It's no pressure. It's not that rapid fire. It's just a little short, easy questions,
Okay,
and then we'll leave it off with some words for the people. We've talked about some of these things, but we'll just do them anyway. What is your render engine of choice?
Octane.
Octane, Team Octane. Do you have a favorite plugin or secret weapon little tool that you use all the time?
I would say Element 3D for After Effects is like a weapon for me. Highly recommend it if people haven't checked that out before. It's worth the money.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Underrated tool, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Very powerful.
Underused.
Do you have a specific favorite effect or generator in Resolume?
Ooh, that one's a tough one for me. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite. It would change every week. I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite. I have to skip that one because I don't know.
You love the variety of effects that Resolume has to offer. Resolume, please sponsor us. Awesome. Sick. Do you have a what is your favorite?
Okay, I'll give you one actually, because this one wins out of all of them. Slice Transform.
Slice Transform. Hell yeah.
Okay. I just like remembered that one's definitely my favorite when we started to move on. Okay. Sorry.
Nice.
Continue.
I love it. It's good. See, it's not that rapid fire. It's okay. We can take our time. Slice Transform. Big fan.
So it's a weapon when you need it. And I think I use it every show with mapping. So yeah.
Yeah. Useful. What is your favorite MIDI controller or piece of hardware?
I use this bad boy. Good old APC 40.
APC 40 Mark II. That's the one.
Yep, that's the one. And,
everybody's doing
not
it.
Super durable. I think I break one every like 7 months, but that's what the extended warranty's for, right?
Nice. Yeah. And those ones
you can just
more durable than the original
pick
one.
a new one up. And I think that's the big reason. Like I break this thing on tour, I go to Guitar Center, swap them out, got a new one for the rest of the shows. Don't have to change my mapping.
Yeah, they're everywhere and everybody's using them. So if you have to like jump on somebody else's rig, you already know.
You're set.
Good tip. Good tip. All right. I like it. APC 40 also please sponsor me. Do you have a favorite visual artist at the moment?
Oh wow.
It could be a few.
Animator or VJ or both. Or
as many as you'd like to name.
Oh my gosh. Well, you already know two of the VJs that I would have named off because we talked about them earlier. So Cam McNeil and Brady V, of course. I think for other VJs, Connor Kaufman, who does Ghastly stuff, he's a really bad boy with like effects. I'm always like, what? How do you? He's like, you got to stack them. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know, but he does like some crazy stuff. And so he's really, really great VJ. In terms of content creation, I have a couple of animators. Like there's this animator Simulation Lab. I love his stuff. He makes really clean like pastel style animation. Um, Other people that I'm super big fans of their work. Let's see. I mean, everybody loves people, right?
You got to.
You got to love people. I think like I would never use his clips, but don't judge anyone for using them ever because he's great. But he was like definitely one of the people that got me really excited about being a VJ, and yeah, so I have to shout him out. Not that he needs any more recognition
Yeah.
than he
I think
already
he's
gets
fine.
because but he's well deserved, well deserved.
Definitely.
And then there's another animator. He actually works with Drew, and he goes by like Strange Juicy. He makes some pretty cool stuff. So
Yeah.
Colin
Colin.
Strange, yeah.
He is. He is
I've
good
never
on the
really met
show.
him before in person, but yeah, I think I like his stuff.
Yeah, great guy and awesome Octane stuff. Really good, really solid animator too. He's been on the show. He's one of the
Awesome.
first few episodes.
Oh, great.
Worked with him a bunch over at Imminent. He's a good dude. So shout out to Colin. Hell yeah. Do you have any what about a music artist?
Oh wow. Like what realm of music? Does it have to be EDM or can it be anyone?
Anything. Enlighten us.
I think the only person I would ever truly fangirl over would be Billie Eilish. So that's my dream to work with her. Because I would just destroy her visuals in the best possible way.
Hell yeah.
I often joke that I would quit everything. Like I would quit med school if she asked me to work for her. I often joke about that. Don't know in practice if that would actually happen. I would probably find a way to make them both work. But yeah. So I'm a huge fan of her stuff. She has synesthesia and I have synesthesia, which is basically like you hear music and you see color for music. So I see colors when I hear music and sound. And she does as well. So I think that's one of the things that I'm like would connect a lot with her on. Wow. And then let's see, other music artists. I don't even know. In EDM, like I don't even know. I like love all the people that I work with. Like every time I hear their music, I'm just like, yeah, I work for some pretty awesome producers. So anybody on my roster is a really great producer.
Hell yeah. I wouldn't ask you to choose favorites between all your babies, you know.
No, yeah. I can't choose favorites, but one of the like craziest things that ever happened to me is I went to the launch of our visual show for Paul Oakenfold. Or wasn't the launch, sorry. This was like a few weeks after we had launched. And he pulls me aside and he's like, I just want to know like how much your work inspires me. Is like when I'm up there DJing, I DJ to whatever is on the screen. He's like, if I see the motion of that one visual, I change the way I play to your visual. And I was like, what? Are you even like the same flavor as like any of these other music artists? Because like I have never met anybody like that says that or that pays that much attention to like the whole show. And I think like that just comes from the time and experience that he's had in the music industry. So I really respect that he even pays attention, you know, to like all of the production and every aspect of the show. So I think that for me was quite an honor to be able to like talk to him about that and learn from him.
Yeah, wow, that's super cool. I think that's pretty rare that they even take the time to look back and see what's on the screen, or could even tell from their perspective.
The way he plays because of it. Like he was serious. It wasn't like like you can't make that stuff up.
Yeah, and that's makes for a pretty intense like feedback loop of you both just like playing off each other. Like, oh, he's getting more intense. Go more intense. Oh shit! Yeah, I gotta play harder. Play harder.
For him, I don't VJ for him, you know. So they just play like the mix, or they just play the visuals behind him, and he like just goes with it, and like whatever. Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's awesome. I have to loop back quickly to the synesthesia thing because I think this is super interesting. Uh, have you encountered many other people who have that ability? And like, do you know if there's like consistency between it? Like, do certain sounds always produce like a red vibe, or like what if your synesthesia with Billie Eilish is clashing and you get into arguments over it? I don't know.
Sure, I like that. Um, for each person who has synesthesia, they tend to associate a specific color that they've chosen in their mind to that specific sound. That would be consistent if they heard that sound again, but it would not be consistent if you put me and Billie Eilish next to each other and said, "What color does this note come up with?" She might say green, I might say blue. So I think that's kind of interesting. And then the other interesting piece is like, if I hear a song but then later find out there's some deeper meaning behind that specific song, or I have another experience that is quite emotional with that song or with that particular sound, it can change the color of the sound. So like it will still be consistent though. It would be like then from there on out I would see that as red or something, where maybe I saw it as like a yellow before. And then I will always associate it with that color until I have another experience that somehow changes it. And that goes for more specifically with like color associations with people. Like I associate colors with people often, and like their color can change based on the state of a relationship between that person, which is quite interesting. So, yeah,
Wow.
synesthesia for you. It's
Yeah.
I
It's
haven't met
fascinating.
other VJs, but I've met other people in the NFT space that have had synesthesia, which has been really interesting to talk about commonalities and common experiences.
That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I haven't met anybody in real life that has it, but I've always been fascinated by the the phenomenon, the idea of it. It's very interesting. Uh, wow. Yeah, cool to think about. Um, yeah, very cool. Sorry, just had to go on that little tangent.
Yeah,
Um, sweet. So let's wrap this thing up with one final thing. What's one like piece of advice or one thing that somebody can think about? If they're thinking about getting into this field or uh, yeah, interested in this type of work. Like, what's that one thing that might help them to be successful?
yeah, I think like kind of going off what I said like earlier about like being really open to learn and being very quick to say I don't know something, and being humble are huge. So find a VJ that is willing to teach you, or find someone that's willing to even just let you watch, and ask questions, be respectful, listen, do a lot more watching than you try to do doing at first until you can learn how to like actually maybe do something. And eventually, hopefully, someone will kind of guide you or give you the opportunities. Like, I think if you come in quite pushy, then people might be less likely to show you things. But I think like if you come in quite respectfully, you should be able to find people that will like take you under their wing or show you things or whatnot. And you might find a few like people that don't want to teach you, but eventually you'll find someone that is willing to like show you and teach.
Awesome. And yeah, lastly, where can people find more about you, more of your work, and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is at VJ Nurite, and on my Instagram there's a link tree. There you can get to like loads of my different resources. You can find my Twitter, you can find my website, and my website is probably the best source if you want to like see what I've done, because it's all out there. But that's, you can also just look it up, but that's www.vjnarite.com. And I highly recommend going to check that out, because there's, yeah, just like fun to go to the client page and see all of the like fun visuals and things like that and shows. So I highly recommend, if you want to find me, then that's like a really good resource.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was really
Yeah,
fun.
thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.